This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Oh, what's up, everybody? Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to another week of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Lots going on. CFL Free Agency tomorrow. The Jets back in action tomorrow night. NHL resuming play this evening. And, of course, the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday in LA between the Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. We have a lot to get to today. Jets back on the practice ice this afternoon at 4 p.m. before beginning their final 40 games in a very dire situation. We'll get to all of that with Jeff Hamilton coming up a little later on, and we'll certainly have some time to talk Bombers with Jeff Hamilton. Big signing today. We'll get to it, Brady Oliveira. But the big question is, what does that mean for Andrew Harris with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? No contract extension right now, and I know it'll be an interesting chat with Hammer when it comes to the Andrew Harris situation, what this could mean for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and his CFL playing career here in his hometown, as well as everything happening around CFL Free Agency. And again, we'll get to quite a bit of Jets talk with Jeff in addition to that. After 2 p.m., if you're watching with us live on YouTube, we will be joined by CFL TSN insider Dave Naylor. Be great to catch up with Nails, talk about what's happened around the league, as well as his thoughts on the Harris situation and what's happening here with the blue and gold. As we get going, a big shout out to the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen every day, including F Apparel, Vita Health, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not AutoCorp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course our friends at Coolbet Canada. A bit of a different weekend. I mean, a lot of golf, curling, Olympics, and it was the All Star weekend for the National Hockey League and of course Pro Bowl weekend in the NFL. Let's get Michael Remis in here as we welcome everyone into chat. Great to see you all with us. Remo, how was the weekend?
Yeah, double All-Star weekend, Huss. That's awesome. Remember when, pro sports wanted nothing to do with Vegas? We wanted to you couldn't have gambling references for the new Vegas hockey team name. Well, there they were on Friday night at the Bellagio, shooting pucks into the fountains and, playing a mock blackjack game as part of the skills competition, 21 and 22. And then you got the Pro Bowl back-to-back in Vegas. I'm here for it. Just have the All-Star game in Vegas every year. This is awesome. It'll actually be in Florida next season. So, yeah, warm climates only in the January, February All-Star game. But a lot of sports, Olympics underway. And, of course, the CFL, free agency period, which has been wild this morning in terms of news relating to the Blue Bombers. So, even though the Jets are off us, there is a lot going on here, and happy Monday. I'm happy here.
All right, I'm gonna welcome everyone in chat, including Ryan Friesen. I know Ryan's trolling all you guys again, folks. I can confirm the bounty has been retired. Ryan Friesen has paid. He did pay the official $40 in Canadian currency via electronic transfer on the weekend. So Ryan, thank you for that. I had a couple little brown jugs on you, but it wasn't as great as I would have enjoyed it if not only did I win the bet, but the Chiefs were actually playing this coming weekend. Because drinking the little brown jugs while watching Mahomes in the Pro Bowl wasn't exactly the way I was expecting to win the bet. Anyways, I know he's saying that he hasn't paid. He's full of it. He has paid. Ryan, thank you for that. So we'll put that story to rest because I knew it was going to dominate the chat for the better part of the day. Hey, listen, before we get back to football and the hockey talk in the weekend, Kerri Einarson, Remo, we've talked a lot about the Bombers trying to three-peat next year in the CFL. Well, Manitoba already home of the three-peat as Kerri Einarson and her teammates win a third consecutive Scotties championship yesterday in Thunder Bay. And it was wild the route that they took. I mean, they were 8-0 perfect through the round robin, and then lost the critical game on Friday night to get to the 1-2 game and ended up having to win 3 more games to do it. But they got it done. They have been the class of women's curling for 3 years now in our country. A real tough weekend for the Tracy Fleury rink, who, got their skip back and ended up losing in that 3-4 game, and then losing to Kerri in a winner move on, loser out matchup. But overall, great weekend for Manitoba rinks, especially the Einarson group. And I imagine there was another big party down in Gimli last night as they're getting used to this, bringing the Scotties championship back to the Interlake.
Yeah. Oh, shout out to Rob Mahoney for the $20 super chat saying bounty for Ryan Friesen's head. He says, whether guilty or I can't scroll up here, my mouse.
Whether paid or not, he's guilty of something. Hashtag no mercy. Well, there can be an internet bounty, a chat bounty on Freezer. But yes, he is back in the good books of WST after taking care of his invoice.
Going on to the curling, it was a pretty incredible. You had the Scotties final going on last night, and at the same time, Rachel Homan and John Morris were in the mixed doubles fighting for their, fighting to get into the medal round. Oh. But just mentioning this for Kerri Einarson, I believe they're the 4th team to complete a three-peat in the Scotties, joining Saskatchewan's Vera Pezer, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, 71-73. Winnipeg's Jennifer Jones, of course, 2008 to 2010, and Nova Scotia's Colleen Jones with 3 titles starting 2001. So that is an elite group of women there. And congratulations to Kerri Einarson and her team for 3rd consecutive Scotties. I got to go to Gimli now and have a beer in honor of them next time I'm there.
No doubt. I mean, I'm sure they were partying at the Viking all week with Kerri and the team bringing back and you know what's great? And we'll hopefully get Kerri on the program and we can talk about it. I mean, she basically lived in a bubble last year for the better part of 2 months. I mean, between the Scotties and the World Championships. This year, the Worlds, I believe, are back in Prince George. So, by that time, I mean, hopefully they'll have fans in the buildings. I mean, maybe Kerri's family can go and be a part of it because, all this winning has really taken a toll on her family side of things. I mean, being away from her kids for as long as she was last year. Nothing's been easy except seemingly for what they've been doing on the ice. So huge congratulations to the Einarson rink. And man, just a heartbreak for Homan and Morris last night. And, Rachel Homan has not had great luck at the Olympics. They didn't have many options. I shouldn't say they had many options. They didn't have basically a good or fair way to decide who was going to be representing Canada in the mixed doubles. They picked 2 of our most accomplished curlers, but certainly a big disappointment for John Morris and Rachel Homan not to be part of the medal round after losing that do or die game last night against the Italians.
Yeah, Homan missing a couple shots near the end, or did John Morris oversweep? And they had to pull out the measurement for that final shot, and it was just like a smidgen away. Very disappointing for Rachel Homan and John Morris. And Rachel Homan, was in the Olympics, the last one in Pyeongchang, and fell short of the podium as well. So I know Ted had the call, and we spoke with him about, questionable methods in determining this team. Maybe there were some other teams that were, better equipped to go, but this is the team they picked. Disappointing result.
No matter who they were picking, there was a bunch of other very worthy teams that were going to felt like they were, left on the outside. And I mean, I didn't envy that the Curling Canada for having to make that decision when the event that got canceled. And it really sucked that, I was actually looking forward to getting out to Portage La Prairie and watching some of that. So didn't get the opportunity to do that. Canada will not get a medal in mixed doubles. We can only hope that our men's and women's teams, skipped by Brad Gushu, and of course by Jennifer Jones, fare better than our mixed doubles team. Was a great weekend for Canada at the Olympics, though, Remis. Really, the last 24 hours have been a ton of medals highlighted, and I know people are talking about it in chat, by the slope style boys. Mark McMorris with a 3rd Olympic bronze medal, and Max Perot with their first gold medal of the Olympics.
Yeah, it took me a bit to get into the Olympics. I think because they had the events before the opening ceremonies, doesn't officially kick off until the opening ceremonies in my mind. And over the weekend, I was very into the women's and men's slope style. I think snowboarding slope style might be the marquee event. The fact that anyone can go and do those kind of tricks off those massive jumps, it's so awesome to watch. So full credit to Max Perot, who won, and Mark McMorris was at this third medal. I mean, both those guys overcoming adversity. Mark McMorris, I mean, he had a career-threatening injury. I think he had a horrific...
How about life-threatening injury? I mean, dude almost died.
Yeah, I remember we had him on with Rick on the old station and talking about it, and it sounded absolutely insane that he was even able to ride again. And I think Max Perot had cancer diagnosis as well that he had to overcome. So pretty incredible.
Couple of great stories. And McMorris is, I mean, obviously his brother was doing the call on it. So, I mean, a pretty cool family. Pretty cool family on it. Yeah, Craig does a really good job.
Max Perot had Hodgkin lymphoma, just to be clear there.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, have had the chance to meet those guys, and Mark in particular. In fact, after the Riders won the Grey Cup and whatever that was, 2013, he's a big Red Bull athlete. I was with a bunch of the Red Bull gang, and they had an area at a bar afterwards, and ended up getting a chance to meet with him, chat. He was in his Rider jersey, proud Regina kid. So he's done amazing things in that sport and for the sport. And it always just strikes me as the most bizarre thing that a dude from the flattest place on earth, Regina, Saskatchewan, would become king of the hill when it comes to Olympic snowboarding. But still getting it done, and another medal for the trophy case.
Yeah, I love that snowboarding slope style. A good way to kick off the Olympics. Now I'm in the mood. I'm staying up late. I did stay up late. I was hoping to watch Canada and ROC last night. What a bizarre situation where Canada... this is the reports. Rob Longley from the Toronto Sun was there tweeting it out last night. It seemed like Canada was waiting to get the COVID test results from ROC, and ROC hadn't delivered them, or they're still waiting. I don't know if it was gamesmanship or what, but after a lengthy delay, they had to play the game in N95 masks, which sounds terrible, but it didn't seem to affect Canada. They won in dominating fashion yet again, and they'll be back in action tonight at 10 o'clock, 10:10 against USA for the rivalry match.
It gets real. It gets real. The two, I mean, I was hoping, and I always have been hoping, that there'd been that Finland and Sweden and some of these other countries would start, like, not beat us, but at least become a little bit more competitive. And while those teams have gotten a lot better, so has Canada, so has the Americans, and they continue to push each other. So this is really what it's all about. I don't think anyone doesn't think that this is the only time they'll be playing. In all likelihood, they'll be playing for a gold medal a little bit later on. But as we've seen both teams sort of take care of their opponents handily, even wearing N95 masks last night, this is what it's all about. Canada, USA, in one of the greatest rivalries in sports, regardless of sport. This is one of the greatest rivalries around.
Oh yeah, Canada, USA in women's hockey. I mean, the elite, memorable games, and all in the Olympics, in the Worlds. They just had the one Marie-Philippe Poulin with the multiple overtime winners. Who Sean Fitzgerald just had an article about the 2002 final. Remember Canada? I remember there was controversy celebrating with cigars and oh no beer on the ice after the game with Healing Wickenheiser. So I know it's just a preliminary round game, but still very it's going to get heated. It's going to be intense hockey. So I'm looking forward to that. I've been seeing all these tweets. I'm not into the Olympics. I kind of wasn't in early, but the slope style really fired me up. And then we'll have men's and women's curling coming up, and men's hockey starts later in the week. And I know the NHLers aren't there, but I am looking forward to seeing how Canada does.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the events, I don't mind watching some of the speed skating. The short track's always fun. You never know what's going to happen. But to me, the women's hockey is the event. I mean, no disrespect to the men that are playing. But, there was so much anticipation for the NHLers. They're not going to be there. We'll still be watching the games and cheering on Team Canada, but the anticipation is nowhere what it would normally be. So to me, it's this game tonight. It'll be the gold medal game in women's hockey. It will be the curling. Love curling. I think there's a lot of people here, and particularly in Manitoba, that share that. So we'll look forward to seeing Gushu and Jones try and get it done and bring back some gold medals. And then the snowboarding events are so neat. The slopestyle might be the best one of them all, Reem. I mean, I do love the half pipe. And of course, we'll have the women's events coming up as well. So there'll certainly be a lot. And there's also ski jumping. I was not aware that there was mixed team ski jumping, but Canada on the podium in that. And I think that surprised a lot of people because that is a sport that is normally dominated by the Scandinavian.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with mixed team ski jumping. I guess you have males and females and you combine their jumping. This is the one where you just jump really far. So congrats to them. That's pretty cool. Yeah, new events. The other snowboarding event I like, snow and ski cross, where you have the race. And that's the one famously, I keep bringing up Lindsay Jacobellis, like years ago, did the method grab when she was in first and fell and lost. I think everyone remembers that. But she went on to have a great career, but sadly remembered for that incident. But yeah,
self-inflicted L with that should have been a gold medal on that. So, we'll be talking Olympics all week long with some updates and maybe even a few guests. We'll hopefully get Ted on at some point from Beijing when we can work out the times to join us. But of course, he's covering the Olympics for Post Media. You can check out his work in the Winnipeg Sun. But let's get back to these All-Star games for a minute. Not that there's too much to talk about, Reem. I did enjoy the skills competition this year more than I normally do. But I have to admit, Kyle Connor would have definitely been up for best flow. His hair looked amazing when he was doing the fastest skater. But I have to think if he had maybe, a ponytail or something a little more aerodynamic, he might have won it if it wasn't for that mane flapping in the wind as he went around the ice.
Yeah, shout out to the Jets Instagram for posting some pictures of Kyle Connor's hair, which is looking absolutely majestic lately. Like how often does he comb it? What kind of product is he putting in it? It looks really good. And I mean, in the event like the race the fastest skater, every second counts, Hus. When you have your hair flowing behind you like that and not tied up, trying to make it aerodynamic as possible, I do think he probably could have shaved off a couple seconds easily. But I mean, who cares about winning when you can look good? And
when you can look that good, exactly.
Yeah,
in
like
Vegas.
who cares? Here's the picture. Hold on.
It seemed like he had a really good time out there being a part of the skills competition. He was dangerous in the All-Star game event. I was a little choked that they weren't able to win the final and win that $1 million. But the Central Division team was outstanding, although it ended up going to the East as they lost in that final. Although pathetic performance by the Pacific Division. They didn't even try in the first game, and I think that was disappointed for a lot of people, that wanted to maybe see a little bit more Connor McDavid. Gary Bettman probably wasn't too pleased.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. It was the All-Star game. I was really thrown off, Huss, that they had the All-Star game at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. I don't know if that's because of Olympics or what. I mean, we talked about All-Star game. I just assumed, I never looked at what time it was. Like, they didn't even have it on my score app that I used to check the times of the games. I just assumed it would be on at 6 p.m. like a regular hockey night in Canada. But I guess it's Vegas. They want to have the game done early and also not conflict with the Olympics. So, have it early, and then you can go party and go see Zed later at night. I think that's where the NHL party was. I saw it on the Bar Down TikTok. So I don't know. I tuned in for a bit, but I got stuff to do Saturday afternoon. Huss. I'm running around doing errands. I'm going tobogganing. I can't sit there. Shoveling. Exactly. Shoveling. I can't sit there and watch an NHL All Star game where they're going half speed. So I had it on for the first period, but I didn't tune into the rest. So I did watch the Friday night was the highlight, though. I think we can all agree.
Yeah. You know what? It was fun. And, what was very interesting, and, obviously, regulars, listeners know we always love kind of focusing sometimes in on the betting aspects of it. I mean, betting on these skills competitions is fun. I mean, all the books have low limits, but, you might want to get in on who's going to have the hardest shot or the fastest skater. Well, that new event, the 21 and 22, as well as I don't even know what they called it, where they were shooting over the fountains into those things. Those were both apparently taped on Thursday, and sportsbooks had the odds up throughout the day until they found out in the mid-afternoon that they had already been taped, and there was a ton of money coming in on Joe Pavelski to win the blackjack. So I have a feeling quite a few of those wagers were refunded. But we did see it, and I thought it was really neat. I think they have a little bit of work to do with the 21 and 22 as far as showing people what they have. Like from TV, it could have been improved, but the concept of what they were doing, I thought was really neat. And credit to them for kind of finding some new creative things to show off the skills, but something that's actually fun to watch as well.
I like the skills competition. The Bellagio Fountains one. It took me a second to figure out what was going on, and also took me a second to figure out how to track the pucks. But Zach Werenski and Roman Josi going toe to toe. I mean, Huberto went first, and I don't know if it's because he went first, and they need to show everyone how it's done. But he did pretty rough, and I was like, oh, this event's, I don't know, maybe this is too hard. But Josi made it look easy in his warm up. A really good behind the scenes article on that, and with Greg Wyshynski on ESPN, who joined us last week. But I enjoyed that one, and the 21 and 22 was cool. It looked really hard, but I enjoyed that. But the breakaway challenge, I feel like not enough people. And people are talking about Trevor Zegras, but it got zero respect by the judges, which was a bit of a sham and a joke. I know they wanted to give it to Pietrangelo, but the Trevor Zegras move was absolutely insane. It
was on another level than everything else. I mean, it's fun to have props and some things, but at the end of the day, people are watching to see what these guys can do, and what he did with his stick and that puck was jaw-dropping. And I mean, to me, there was nothing even close to that in the entire competition. So yes, a complete scam that Alex Pietrangelo just brought out the drum line of the Vegas Golden Knights and ended up winning it. I mean, what are you trying to promote here? Not to mention, Zegras had the full Average Joe's outfit on, and I mean, he put a lot into that one.
Yes, I agree. He had the Average Joe's. He did a blindfolded. He had the mascots throwing dodgeballs at him. I mean, I know Pietrangelo plays for Vegas, but like, Justin Bourne tweeted, is like, come on, Zegras is on an entry-level deal, and Pietrangelo got a big free agent contract. It's $30K if you win one of these, and for an event decided by judges, that was very, very disappointing. So,
well, I'll say this, with the NHL trying to, continue to move forward and improve diversity, I think these are all important things that they're doing, but do you think that they were maybe rethinking the thought of bringing Manon Rhéaume out to be a part of the All-Star game, and then have her play the role of jobber goalie in the breakaway competition?
Okay. This was my theory on Manon. So they came out, they gave her the big ovation, her and Wyatt Russell. But yeah, jobber goalie is a really good description. My guess on that is, they called her up and they're like, hey, do you want a free trip to Vegas? Do you want a hotel room? Do you want to come to all the NHL parties? I think that's how you get people to do it.
Yeah, special guest. Bring your equipment, by the way.
Or they had for her. But yeah, jobber goalie. She just sat there and let these guys perform these ridiculous deeks on her and Wyatt Russell. I'm hoping they gave her a free trip. She has been doing commentary on Bally Sports for the Red Wings broadcast, so she is still involved with the game as a broadcaster.
It just seemed weird, but I mean, if the whole concept is just to grab plugs that are going to let everything in, often I think intentionally, do you want to have a historic, groundbreaking female play the role of Barry O or Steve Lombardi in this event?
Yeah,
I was a little surprised about that, to be honest with you.
I was surprised on that as well. I thought, this is kind of disrespectful to have her out. And
Al Snow was busy.
She's an absolute pioneer for women's hockey. Incredible. I think you have to have her involved in the game, but like, to have her as you said, as a goalie jobber, pretty disrespectful.
Anyways,
hopefully she got a free trip. Sorry.
I laughed about that. Other highlights of the All-Star game was Tyreek Hill doing the Stone Cold with not very well, by the way, with 2 24-ounce cans of Bud. And I don't know what they'd done to the cans beforehand, but the minute he did the kind of cheers, they almost exploded. However, the tops of the cans, like where you normally open to drink, weren't open. So it was bizarre. He just got beer all over himself, probably only drained half of each can, and then put them down and just sat there soaking in one of the more awkward NHL All Star moments of all time.
He clanked 2 beers together that weren't open?
Well, I mean, they were opened, but I don't think the actual tops were open. I think they had some cans in it. So when he went like this, it sprayed all over the place, but not really into his mouth. And then it was just all over himself. Yeah, it was quite a it was quite a mess.
I didn't. Yeah, again, I know that they also cut to Tyreek Hill during the Rasmus Dahlin goal, so it was Casey getting one over on the Buffalo fans. Once again, that was the common joke there on Twitter. So I guess they had some highlights, and yeah, Claude Giroux won MVP. I guess Claude Giroux's getting kind of old. I still think of him as a young guy, but I mean, he's the guy that everyone is focused on. Where is he going to go? Who's he going to get traded to? Does he want to leave Philly or does he want to stay there? But props to him for winning MVP.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what our conversations are like about said trade deadline. And a lot of that is going to depend on what the Winnipeg Jets do coming right out of this break, beginning tomorrow at the Canada Life Center. Haven't mentioned the rink for a while. Have to remember it's got a new name. And good news, fans are going to be back in the building, 7,500 for tomorrow's game. So very much looking forward to finally getting back into the rink. We were going to talk Jets and we're going to talk Bombers with Jeff Hamilton coming up in just a second. A big shout out to our friends over at F Apparel, Winnipeg and Manitoba's go-to spot for custom-made men's clothing and the sweetest suits around. Whether you're looking for a custom-made suit for yourself, dress clothes, pants, casual chinos, dress shirts, or more, F Apparel has it all. And of course, grad season is around the corner. I know it's cold, but we're into February and we will have grads and hopefully normal grads for particularly the high schoolers. One of the things every kid missed the last few years was the chance to do a real high school graduation. And F specializes in making unique, one-of-a-kind looks for all Winnipeg high school graduates. If you know someone graduating this year, tell them if they bring in their current high school ID to F, they'll get a free custom dress shirt and tie with any suit order. That means they can get a custom-made suit, shirt, and tie for as little as $3.99. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown, or you can find them online at F. That's EPHapparel.com. It's Heart Month, and 12 months a year is probably a good time to be friendly to your heart. You know how important that is. But, considering that it is February and Heart Month, it's a great time to stock up on your heart-healthy supplements and foods at Vita Health Fresh Market with great prices on Winnipeg's best selection of natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, not to mention delicious lunch options, quick and easy with their grab-and-go Vita Market salads, soups, sandwiches, and more. And if you can't make it into the store, you can visit their website to shop online or schedule a delivery with Instacart. Get on down to Vita Health Fresh Market. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge. And you can find out more online at myvita.ca. And of course, our friends at Culligan Water are the experts for all things water in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. Family owned for 65 years here in the Peg. They've got it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, and whole home systems, drinking water systems, not to mention city-wide water delivery services as well. And if you have got water needs for your business, they've got commercial and industrial water products and solutions as well. If you need water, talk to the experts at Culligan. Tell them Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. They're at 1200 Sargent, 204-694-5180, or see them online at drinkculligan.com. All right, Monday, it's hammer time, and we've got lots to get to with Jeff Hamilton today. I do want to dive into the Winnipeg Jets and, of course, the upcoming game tomorrow and the predicament the hockey club's in. But I have a feeling we'll be talking about Andrew Harris to get things going. Let's get Hammer in here and welcome in. Nice shirt, by the way, supporting the K&R boys. The Wake Up tee is in.
It's arrived.
How'd you pick it over the headband?
I wore the headband over the weekend, so it's already in the rotation. So I figured I'd bring some energy to this interview, and I feel like this one's more aggressive. I wore it out. I wore the Sean's headband shirt to a friend's place on the weekend. I thought it would get less conversation than a big wake up, t-shirt sign that I'd have to answer, but I was proven wrong. Everyone wanted to know, what the heck is Sean's headband? So I got a bit of work to get done on my inner circle on talking about the show, but we ended up talking about the Kenny and Rennie show. We talked about your show. We started pulling up clips and putting it in the rotation Monday. I need to wake me up a little bit.
Good
today.
time. Yeah, we thought the weekend views were high. It must have just you been entertaining people at parties by pulling up clips of Kenny and Rennie and Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hammer, we've got a lot of Jets to get to, but let's start off with the Bombers. And we're going to hit the CFL free agency with Dave Naylor a little bit later on. But of course, the big news, Nick Taylor re-signed, Brady Oliveira re-signed to a 2-year deal. That coming off the heels of the Johnny Augustine deal. What does this mean for Andrew Harris as a member of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
We got less than 24 hours to find out, but every hour that it gets closer to tomorrow's 11 a.m. Central, opening of free agency, I think you have to be worried that the Bombers are actually considering moving on from 33, something I thought would be an impossible situation even just a week or two ago, knowing that, the importance of his, maybe not even just the importance to the future, because I think we're looking at a year by year situation with Andrew Harris. I think we've been looking at that for the last couple of years, but just what I'm hearing coming out of kind of both camps and just that there really is, no common ground there, or they're not finding common ground. And there's just a bit of a weird sense that, in fact, Andrew Harris could very well be on a different team next year. And the reason why I think it's fascinating is because I think it's a lose-lose for both sides. I think Winnipeg is crazy to not give him an opportunity to come back if he wants to come back. Now, there's obviously some factors in that which are strictly football related, and the health status and future and impact and all those things. But just given what Andrew Harris has done for this organization, his arrival in 2016 coinciding directly with the turnaround with this organization, and particularly what he's done over the last couple seasons, you think he would, you think that it would just be a good business decision. So, there's lots to talk about in there. It's loaded. I could go on for another 10 minutes, but it's feeling like there might need to be other parties intervening here, a la Wade Miller, perhaps, to get this guy inked, because right now it does not look like the game plan is to have 33 in the mix for next season.
We had Andrew on. He was kind enough to join us 2 or 3 weeks ago and, talked a little bit about the Grey Cup and talked about the offseason. And I asked him, have you thought about next year, where things are at? And he was pretty clear that he felt that he still has, some gas left in the tank and the ability to come back out and perform at a high level and help teams win. I understand that the Bombers, you're a general manager, you're thinking about the present, but you're also thinking about the future. And it was important for them to continue keeping these Canadian running backs in the fold. And you got Kyle Borsa coming into the mix potentially from the University of Regina. And now you got Johnny and Brady both signed to 2-year deals. You wonder what those raises were. And just even if they wanted to bring Andrew Harris back, how much money is left considering the other signings that they've had, and how hamstrung is Kyle Walters to bring him back, even if the intention is to get 33 back with the club?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at that question. One being, what did Kyle Walters say not too very long ago when he addressed the media? He said it would be a very difficult challenge to have all three under contract. And as you just said, Huss, 2 of those guys, in Johnny Augustine and Brady Oliveira, are both now signed with the club for multiple years. Or sorry, Brady's is 1 year. The reality is Andrew Harris is better than the other 2 guys. And the CFL isn't one of those growing leagues where you look towards, 2 years down the road. You look, and especially if you're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coming off back-to-back titles, you got to look 22 square in the face. And I think there is some logic in choosing a guy like Brady Oliveira and a Johnny Augustine, who I think, if that's where they go with this, is going to be more of a 1-2 punch. I think you're going to see, them feeding off each other, which could also exist with Andrew Harris. And I think this is an important piece of the puzzle, is that it may not look great. It's not at a stage where they've split sides. Like, I think there's a mutual interest on both sides, and there's still some time here to, I would argue, rectify this wrong that seems like we're headed here. And still have, with the question of the money, right? So is there enough money? Well, why isn't that? I don't think that Brady Oliveira could have got more money somewhere else. Probably. He probably gets in, what I'm hearing is about $110,000, which is pretty modest, I think, for a starter, if indeed Brady Oliveira becomes a starter for 2022. But it's also a pretty good pay hike for a guy who, has shown glimpses that he can be a starter, but hasn't actually taken on the workload of a real starter for a long enough period of time. I mean, obviously we saw him a good chunk last year, in 2021. You can make the argument maybe he's ready for more. You can also make the argument that Andrew Harris would be a better running back or a better option. Then you have to take into consideration all the money that Andrew Harris probably brings into the organization or has brought into the organization in butts and seats. A lot of people love Andrew Harris. A lot of people have Winnipeg Blue Bombers jerseys with number 33 on it and Harris on the name bar. That is because he's a beloved player in this organization, within the greater community. And I think you're going to find a lot of people be unhappy if he's not added in the mix. You're going to see people that get it from a football standpoint, but you're going to get an overwhelming amount of people in the direction of, I can't believe they would look past Andrew Harris. I can't believe they would not bring him back. He's a hometown hero. He's all these things. And I don't think it would look well on an organization if Andrew Harris is wearing a different team's jersey, which is quite possible if he's not given. I mean, they're forcing his hand if they don't bring him back to go somewhere else. And then the other part in all this is the teammates of Andrew Harris, all of whom want him back. I think there really is a momentum building in that locker room as we get closer to the deadline tomorrow of, okay, guys, like, is this a joke? I think, some of these, the questions that are coming into the organization from players that have already re-signed have gone from, okay, still time to, okay, guys, I'm hearing a lot of stuff from the media. We're now, within the 24-hour window here of signing him. Why aren't you getting it done? And I think those messages are becoming less and less kind from a team who, loves 33, loves Andrew Harris. So the last thing on that is the organization, of all the goodwill they've built up over the last couple of seasons with winning the Grey Cup and becoming that team. And there's not a lot of quote unquote pissing matches that they're going to lose publicly. I don't know if they win the one with Andrew Harris. And to have all that, I'm not saying all the goodwill is going to come tumbling down for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but to even think that that momentum is stalled because you're fighting with the guy who is directly responsible for a lot of the turnaround just seems unfathomable. And I think it's going to be fascinating from a media standpoint, from my particular perch, on what the result will be and emotion will be come tomorrow if that deadline passes.
Well, I can tell you from a fan perspective, it would be a damn shame if he wasn't on the football team going forward, knowing how important he's been. And, we've talked about how impactful that signing was. I mean, some will say, I certainly maintain it's the most impactful one in the history of the Bombers. And we'll talk to Dave Naylor about this later on. And we suggest it might be the most impactful one, certainly one of them in Canadian Football League history. And the thought of him finishing his career anywhere other than Winnipeg almost turns the stomachs, I think, of a lot of Bomber fans. I will say this, though, Jeff, if it does go down that way, and we hear tomorrow or the next day that he's signing with the Riders or the Elks or one of these teams, make no mistake about it. This is going to be a dude that is playing once again with a chip on his shoulder. And listen, I think that he will be money well spent for whoever gets him in the uniform next year, considering what's happened. And he always seems to be a guy that always feels like he has something to prove. The guy's got nothing to prove, but he will be in that mode if he goes elsewhere. And just wait till a game at IG Field with Andrew Harris coming out of the visitors' tunnel room. Not something that I thought we'd be talking about on this program, to be honest.
It will be a never-ending storyline. It will be a storyline, and depending on where he goes. I mean, we know if you take a quick glance around the league, you don't got to look too far west to see who needs a running back and who might just want to flip the script on 2022. I mean, this is just like an insane potential storyline wherever he goes. But if he goes over to the neighbors over in Saskatchewan, dare I even suggest the idea, wow, it's hard to reconcile that being a potential reality here for this organization. But again, there's still plenty of time. Who knows what can happen? Who knows who can intervene? Who knows what the reality will be for the blue and gold, but it certainly hasn't been a boring off season, and we'll keep an eye on him.
Hey, where do you think Osha's in all of this? Because, I mean, I think he just loves Andrew Harris, and he knows the example that he's set over the number of years that he's been here. I mean, do you think, is this more Kyle Walters doing, what is the very difficult job sometimes of making tough decisions based on your cap restraints that might not totally be in line with the guy that is calling the shots on the sidelines?
No, I think this is Mike O'Shea's decision too. Like, I mean, if you want to go percentages, it's at the very least 50-50. Like, Kyle Walters isn't telling Mike O'Shea what he needs to do. And, you like to think vice versa on that. I mean, I think it ultimately falls on Kyle Walters just in his position. But as we've known within this organization, there's obviously a massive amount of respect for Mike O'Shea and what he wants. He's been the face of the organization. That's been, echoed by Kyle Walters several times. So there really is no stick in the mud here. Like, this wouldn't be one of those things where Mike O'Shea is demanding the opposite and Kyle Walters is, choosing this hill to die on. There's a 0% chance in my mind that's the situation. So if that's the reality, this is a direct response to Mike O'Shea's decision. And I think really for him, it's, like I said, I think he can separate himself with the football decisions. Like, I think that's where this is being justified. And we've seen Mike O'Shea, although we've seen him be very loyal in the past, we've also seen him be very stubborn in his decision-making. And I think once he makes a decision, that's where he goes with it. The way I see it, and I've written about it in my column, is, Mike O'Shea was being, when Kyle Walters spoke last, he said Mike O'Shea and Andrew Harris were talking. Well, what could they possibly be talking about? And I think the reality of it is, points to his health, his age, what kind of impact he would have, probably dollars and cents as far as how much of a contract the Bombers are willing to give him at this point. You'd have to think, Andrew would play a little, would take that homegrown haircut or whatever you want to call it. You think that he would want to, this isn't going to be a difference between 10 and 20 grand just when you factor in all the, the stuff with playoffs and all those things. But at the same time, I think this is really how much they can get out of Andrew this year. And, he came into camp, self-admittedly was not in the best shape. No coincidence. He got injured early into training camp, day 1, day 2, and then was out for the early on stages and then got injured again. So his health is obviously a question mark. I just think at this point, you can't really be dealing with 33 with a prove me kind of attitude. And it should rather be, not, again, there needs to be give and take on both sides, but just given what Andrew Harris has done for this organization, I can't say I agree with what's happening either with Mike O'Shea or with Kyle Walters in there.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out over the next 24 hours and into the official opening of CFL Free Agency. We will talk more about this with Dave Naylor a little later on in the program. Just one final Bomber question before we flip over to the Jets. Are you surprised that any players haven't been re-signed that are going to the market tomorrow that maybe you thought would already be inked by Walters, considering how much work he's been doing over the last month to get former members of the back-to-back champs back in the peg?
Well, the list is kind of small. I think there's 17 in total from 41, and there's only a handful of those who are kind of starters or prominent players. Obviously, Kenny Lawler isn't signed because I'm hearing the exact same thing. Edmonton's offering him upwards of $300,000 next year, so that's going to be a bidding war that the Bombers already couldn't get involved with when it was reported that BC was offering $260,000. So he's gone. I don't see them even coming close to that total. Steven Richardson's a guy they would want back on the D line, but from what I understand, BC's going after him too. And that's kind of where he's leaning. I think Brandon Alexander is definitely back in blue and gold next season. No problem there. He suffered a torn ACL on the very last play of the Grey Cup game, that interception. So he's not even going to be ready towards the fall. So there's no rush there. And, I think that he'll be on the Bombers for sure. Then there's, who else are we looking at here? There's a couple other. Darvin Adams has been on social media. He says that he's probably not coming back to Winnipeg. Maybe there's a reunion with Paul LaPolice in Ottawa for him. But I also think there's some players the Bombers will be looking for. There's no one I'm really surprised they haven't signed, except for obviously Andrew Harris, as we've been talking about. The other ones are just kind of consequence, and some of the bullets you kind of have to take from inking or re-signing a lot of your players, many of which came with raises. So the other, I think they're free agency. I'd be looking for receiver. I don't think they're going to be a big, big players in free agency unless they can get some guys coming for haircuts who just really want to play for Winnipeg, and that might be a benefit for them and just what they've been able to do obviously over the last couple of seasons. But a guy I'd be keeping an eye on whose name's been reported is Greg Ellingson. We know that Zach Collaros likes him. We've heard that in the past, and we know that he's when you look at the free agents and receivers, he's one of the more well-known names. And I think for him, depending on how big the bidding war is, maybe you can get him at a decent price, because I put him in the same camp as I was putting Darrell Walker, and that's a prove me contract after a down year in 2021. So that's kind of it for Bombers. I think it'll be quiet, but that's what you need to know.
Yeah, listen, we'll be all over it this week, and I know you will be in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press, including a big piece on the Harris situation coming up tomorrow. Moving on to the local hockey squad, I hope that the Jets got a lot of rest over the course of the weekend in this All-Star break, because starting tomorrow, it is essentially a game every second day for the next 80 games. And Jeff, this is a big hill to climb for a team that comes out of the All-Star break just one game above NHL 500, and by my count, needing to play well in excess of 600 hockey for the rest of the year if they even want to be in the mix for a playoff spot at the end of the season. What do you make of the challenges for the club going into tomorrow night against the Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, I think mighty. The challenge is the hill is mighty to climb. It's the good news is there's time. There's just under half the games remaining. A lot of time to make damage, to do some damage in the standings, to climb. Some much needed spots. I think what are they sitting at, about 9 points out of that first wild card spot from Calgary. Handful of teams in front of them, so it's going to be a battle. But I mean, it's funny, right? Because 600 hockey, or just a bit over 600 hockey, seems daunting for this team, but it shouldn't be daunting for a team going into the playoffs. Like, that should be the standard. Like, do you want to be closer to 500 hockey going into the playoffs? This is so the reality is, and I think the big question for the Jets is, how quickly can they get to putting something together that resembles just the look of playoff hockey, and energy, a tempo, strategy, whatever you want to classify it as. How can they get to playing some consistent hockey and going on a run, right? Like, I mean, you can't start slow here. You can't come out and lose the first couple games. We're in a situation where, yes, there's time, but there's going to be a bit of a self-check every month to see where this team is, because there's also the reality of the trade deadline looming, next month, and where are the Jets heading into that stretch of games, and so I mean, or that stretch of the season, and so there's going to be you hope that there's a bit of soul searching. Maybe you hope that they went out and let off some steam. Maybe I don't think it was a lot of fun. A lot of guys were complaining about playing in Canada and all that stuff, and I know there's not a lot of empathy amongst fans for that stuff, but if they can get out, if they would have spent this last week kind of enjoying themselves and coming back to the organization ready, and like you said, is going to be a massive there's not going to be a lot of practice time. It's going to be a massive game heavy schedule, and there really is nothing much to add than what we've said over the last week or couple weeks here, as the Jets kind of went diving into the break with a big loss to Philly and no points to show for it. You just have to think that something needs to give, and we're heading towards some interesting times here this season. Is it going to be interesting because the Jets figured it out, or is it going to be interesting because the Jets continue to free fall and some major questions need to be answered from this organization?
With the 40 games left, I mean, Rick always used to do the 10-game segments, but I mean, I'm looking at the rest of this season, and we're basically talking about 8 5-game segments. And the Winnipeg Jets need to win 3 of 5 in every one of those segments. And then, add in a couple loser points, maybe get 4 in here, there. And the thing about that is, I mean, on paper, can you win 3 of 5 games? Well, I mean, to your point, if you're a playoff team, you should be able to. And I mean, in the Winnipeg Jets situation, they have to. But with the amount of games, Jeff, if things don't get on the right track, like beginning tomorrow night and get right out, I mean, we could be talking about a very different situation. I mean, there is the potential of this team bottoming out in the next 10 games. And at that point, with a month left before the trade deadline, it really will increase the attention on this hockey club for all the wrong reasons, not because of where they're playing and what they're capable of doing, but it'll be more of like what's going to change and who's going to be gone by the 21st of March.
Well, and that's the kind of doom and gloom that I know fans don't want to talk about. But the reality is yeah, that game against St. Louis, that mighty Saturday triumph against the St. Louis Blues that was being trumpeted as the blueprint and all that, turned out to be a bit of a mirage. I mean, the reality for this organization is they've lost 7 of the last 8 games. So to just say they're going to win 3 out of the next 5 over these next 8 5-game stretches, yes, it shouldn't be difficult for a team destined for the playoffs, but it's not exactly a cakewalk for an organization that's trending in the opposite direction. Again, lots of time here, but those questions will be asked if they continue to not win 3 of the next 5 over this next month stretch. And there's going to be key. There's a lot of home games here to be made up. I think, obviously with the restrictions easing up, I don't know, I guess we're going to about 50% and then 100% by the end of March or whatever that deadline is. I know that's not going to be ideal, but it's better than 250 fans. So there's lots of opportunity here for the Jets, but there's also just, not a ton of proof to suggest, other than the fact they're a talented team and that, you look at the roster and you look at who, the pieces they have in net and what they have on, in all areas, you just think they should be better. But, the proof's in the pudding, and we're just not seeing a lot of success. So until that kind of snaps, we're just going to kind of hope and fans are going to hope and wait for that to turn around. And the reality is it needs to be now. So the best hockey can't be perfect right away, but it definitely needs to be perfect soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that could help the Jets in a big way. First and foremost would be get Nikolai Ehlers back in the lineup. But, from what we heard from the coaching staff, I mean, I'm not sure Jet fans should be holding their breath that as soon as he's technically eligible to come off the LTIR, he'll be back in the lineup, Jeff. I mean, and that is going to put continued stress on that top 6. Kyle Connor's been incredibly productive playing along with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Cole Perfetti. And really, I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about Mark Scheifele, but to me, I mean, there's 2 guys that need to come out and be far better than they've been and do it consistently. One is Mark Scheifele and the other is Connor Hellebuck. And I mean, listen, fair or unfair, these guys are 2 of the most important players on this team. And it's hard to imagine a turnaround without a big bump, if you will, in what those guys are able to do. And listen, I say Hellebuck in just because he's raised the bar so high. And to be honest, a lot of the success that the Jets have had over the past couple of years has come because he has been one of the best players in his position, in the National Hockey League. I'm not sure that that's been the case often enough so far this season. But we certainly know it's there. And as far as Scheifele goes, I mean, we've all seen how good Mark Scheifele can be. We just haven't seen that often enough. And, if that's not happening without pretty much any contributions from the bottom 6, it's hard to imagine a turnaround. But at the same time, a big opportunity. I mean, you said it last week. You want to change the narrative? A guy like Mark Scheifele can do that very quickly by coming out, having some good games, and continuing to do it on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I mean, we'll continue to talk about it so long as, Mark Scheifele isn't producing at the clip that everyone has expected him, because he's shown for years that ability to show up on offense and to be an impact in that game. It's just, I think some of the columns have come out, about him. He's maybe he gets an opportunity to kind of address those. It creates a little bit of a hook for him to ask questions about his game. Where he's at. I think it's time, Kevin Cheveldayoff was supposed to speak sometime early this week. You're expecting it to be sometime this week. And I've heard some calls for Mark Chipman. I know there's some people who don't think that Mark Chipman should have to talk. I'm a bit indifferent in all of it, but I do think there's some validity to asking Mark Chipman to speak, just given the kind of owner he is on this organization and the impact and influence he has in directly with the hockey decisions. Maybe there's some clarity to be had over what the situation with 55 is. Is he hurt? Is he not happy? Is it, what seemed, I don't know if we're going to get those answers to those questions. Very rarely do you get those kind of intimate details, in-house stuff that, GMs certainly don't like to talk about and players don't often talk about them until it's hitting kind of rock bottom and there's, trade requests and all that stuff. Certainly not suggesting that's where it's hit for Mark Scheifele. But I do think something's got to give. I think, if this team's going to be good, if they're going to survive Nikolai Ehlers, which I'm with you, asking about him in Philadelphia, he's getting better, but the vibe is just given him being on long-term injury reserve, I think he's weeks and weeks away. So, if you're obviously not getting production from Nikolai Ehlers with him not being in the lineup, and if you're not getting production from Mark Scheifele, who is in the lineup, that's a significant amount of offense that this team's relied on in the past. And, I don't think, I think you can look at Connor Hellebuyck's game over the last little bit and maybe, question it, or maybe suggest that Eric Comrie, given what he was able to do in St. Louis, deserves more of the crease. But I certainly don't put this at Hellebuyck's feet. There's certainly a lot of games early in the season where the Jets were not playing well, but we're putting together wins. We're on, backs of great efforts from Connor Hellebuyck, and he continues to be amongst the better goalies in the league. So I think he's bought a bit of a leash, I guess, if you will.
Well, and to be fair to Hellebuyck, I mean, there was that period earlier, kind of that first lull that the Jets had before Maurice was gone, where he was giving up 2 goals a game over 8 or 9 games, and I think the team only won 3 of them. So
yeah, it wasn't scoring. Exactly.
I guess the reason why, the reason why I bring up 37 and 55 is because those guys are truly elite players. Like Maul Parise pop in. Hey, you forgot about Lowry, Kopp, JMO, Dylan, Schmidt, Wheeler. I mean, listen, I'm not really forgetting about those guys. I mean, you can go down the list. There's not very many players on this list that you can say they don't need to be better. But, you naturally start with the star players and the guys that can make the biggest impact. But he does make a good point. And, fairly or unfairly, we focus on some of those top players, but it is a team game. And outside, listen, even if that Scheifele line really gets going and starts, playing very well, and we get that production from that top line, it's very difficult to see a turnaround happening with the offense being such a black hole it is right now for Lowry's line and whatever incarnation of the fourth line the Jets have right now. And, Dave Lowry being able to find out a way or a combination that works a little bit more productively in the bottom 6 would also go a long way to maybe change a few of these 1-goal games to at least games that get to overtime and potentially 2 points.
Well, I think that's going to be a big part of the second half. I mean, is Dave Lowry the guy that you want behind the bench long term? He's certainly not proving as much. And, is that his game plan that's not meshing well? Is it the players? I mean, you can't replace all the players. You can only, that's why often the coaches go first. So that's certainly something that needs to be brought up. Is it the game plan or the coaching strategy or the identity that Dave Lowry wants to instill with this club, which we've heard over and over for the last 7 weeks that he's been, the man in charge, fast and hard to play against. I think he's not like a Paul Maurice. He's not going to give you the X and O's and the breakdowns of how to execute that identity, but it's kind of a broad one when you don't. And so I think a lot of people are curious what exactly this team is getting out of their coaching staff, what the future plans are. And that's something that's going to need to be answered, whether or not that gets addressed in the offseason or sometime over the next little while here. We've seen a lot of coaching. We've seen a lot of movement in coaching throughout the last few years. And we've certainly seen guys show up, out of nowhere and join benches and become advisors and see what the future plan is. I wonder what's cooking with Winnipeg. And I think if the team starts putting together wins and starts clawing their way back into the playoff picture, that narrative is certainly going to die down a bit. But if it continues to trend the way it is, I think that's going to be the main one. A lot of people are going to be wondering when and if change is coming.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press is with us. See, we got 300 people in the chat. Great to see you all here. Do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're new around here, hit that red subscribe button and join us daily, 1 o'clock here on WST. Or, of course, you can always check out the podcast after we broadcast live on YouTube each and every day. Cheveldayoff's a fascinating, in a really interesting situation, I should say. Not one that he anticipated, not one that he wants to be in. But, it's almost time for the rubber to hit the road on this season one way or the other. And as we mentioned, we'll find out very quickly whether the Jets are going to do what they can to begin getting back into it, or it's going to continue slide away. I know you had asked about when we might hear from Chevy, and the thought was it would be early this week. Any more clarity on when the general manager will speak, Jeff? And when he does, Do you think it will be more an old school Cheveldayoff press conference where he tries to, answer the questions as well as possible without really give anything away? Or will it be closer to what he had to say after Paul Maurice left, which I thought was one of the more upfront and straight press conferences that we've ever heard from the general manager, who really put the pressure and the challenge to his players? And unfortunately, they haven't really responded that well since Maurice left.
Well, I think traditionally you would have had Kevin Cheveldayoff speak before the All-Star break, just as like a lead into, or maybe not sometime over the break, because it's often a good opportunity for GMs to get away from it all, or to do business and not, speak to media. Anyways, that never happened. There was a lot of chatter. That's why I tweeted out last week. There were plans for Kevin Cheveldayoff to speak sometime this week. The requests are in. The Jets understand that the media wants to talk to Kevin Cheveldayoff, so it's a matter of figuring out what that time is. I'd have to assume it's this week. I can't see it being any other week. I don't know why you would wait, unless there was, news that you were planning to address and didn't want to talk twice in a matter of 2 weeks. So I'm expecting it to be sometime this week, whenever that might be. I'm not 100% sure what Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to show up, or which rather Kevin Cheveldayoff will show up. The one who is, like you said, was a little bit more, talkative or insightful, if you will, following the Maurice exit versus kind of every other press conference we've been a part of. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to predict. You'd like to think that maybe some real talk goes on, or some efforts to kind of address what's happening. But I mean, at the same time, I think, it's got to be the questions asked to him. I think this is the first time that Kevin Cheveldayoff maybe he doesn't feel any heat, but maybe this is the first time where he should feel heat on his position, having been with the organization since the beginning, and ultimately seeing a team that has made some moves that the summer of Chevy was heralded, over and over again. And now it's becoming, winter is coming here, and it does not feel good for Jets fans. So the winter hasn't exactly matched the heat of the summer. So maybe he needs to reflect on his own job and the fact that this team hasn't progressed, and why we've seen other teams around the league, with seemingly less talented rosters, make bigger moves this year. And by moves, I mean, play better than the Jets. So I think there's a lot of, perhaps the spotlight's a bit more on him now, particularly, he's got to address the coaching situation as well, like, what he plans to do at Dave Lowry. Again, I'm not sure he's going to be very open about that. I don't think you tell the media when you're planning to, remove a guy or add years to his contract, but there's going to be some questions that whether or not he provides the answers fans are looking for, he's going to have to address. And, as much as I want to say that's a victory in itself, I think some fans would disagree when you get some of the answers that we've gotten in the past, but I think there's some different questions coming this time around that will be interesting regardless of, what Cheveldayoff might say, or maybe more importantly, what he won't say.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A 4:00 practice today. Do we know that Kyle Connors got back here and passed his COVID test? I couldn't help but notice that Jack Hughes showed up in New Jersey with the positive test, and he's on the list. And, even if you're not symptomatic, you have to take the test, presumably, to get back to Winnipeg. So there will be testing. We were just having a bit of a Murphy's Law discussion with a friend of mine yesterday afternoon. And he, bringing up all the bad things could happen. And like, can you imagine going into this next week with all that's on the line and not having your best scorer in the lineup right now? Hopefully that's not something we'll be talking about, because he has been one of the real bright spots of the team so far this season. And they're going to need a lot of Kyle Connor on the ice and a lot of red lights, courtesy of number 81, if they want to get back in this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the answer to that question, Huss, but I think
we'll know today at 4.
We'll get that answer, in a couple hours, because they played Friday. The skills comp was Friday, game was Saturday. I'm sure there was fun to be had Saturday night. I don't think you get an extra night off because you made the All Star game and whatever. So, and maybe the 4 o'clock. Well, the 4 o'clock would be it would be indicative of, actually, when you look at the time and days off, they would want to start later. They wouldn't want to have that day because it would take out. I'm sure there's some players that, showed up today, might be an optional one. And we'll see about the tests and all that stuff. But yeah, the testing is, but actually, sorry, I think depending on where all the other players went, a lot of them left Winnipeg. So depending on where they went, they went to the States, they're going to need, they're going to need to get tested. So yeah, but I'm with you. As much as, I think there's probably a lot of guys that had a lot of fun out there. You got to hope that the results come back. the Jets can't face more bad results, whether it's on the ice or on the testing, on the testing list or whatever it may be. These guys need a little bit of help, and that certainly wouldn't be it.
Hey, Hammer, just before we go, non-Jets topic, but what'd you think of Rocky Wirtz's act last week?
Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, it just sounds like, I don't know. I try to put my shoes into somebody who has $1 billion, and I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't expect that I owe anybody anything. So and that's not making an excuse. I'm with everybody. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was, it'd be one thing if they wouldn't have had time to plan for this. Like, I just, you know what I mean? Like, and his son was ready to answer the question, and it would just,
that's the thing. It seemed like they've actually been doing a bunch of things behind that they were they wanted to talk about.
And they have. And I think maybe it was personal to Mark Lazarus at the Athletic. Maybe Rocky didn't like what he had written, and just his face channeled that anger. But it's just, of all the things, like, I mean, you're the one who set up the round table. You're the one who knew that your image was in trouble. You're the one who, is responsible for answering some of these questions. And whether it's giving it the opportunity to the people in charge of the day-to-day, and particularly these things, because, Rocky Wirtz isn't sitting, in a bunch of seminars and going through all the changes. He's just providing the money and the operation. So, I just felt like, obviously, he doesn't take instruction from anybody or doesn't feel like he owes anyone anything, because it just feels like a massive, colossal failure from a PR, where it was just a softball, and you could have, you didn't have to go into great detail of everything that the organization is doing to protect its players, but maybe a couple, I'm not advocating canned sentences, but in this situation, those should have been the first few that were memorized by Rocky Wirtz. And instead, it was just an absolute disaster, and took away from, whether you want to call it a fun weekend with All Star or a quiet weekend with All Star, however you choose to, participate, turned into, an organization that's been just mirrored in this, the scandal for all season long, and to add, gasoline to flames where you could have easily put water on them. It's just unfortunate. To a word I often use, unfortunate.
Yeah, that was that was the worst case scenario. They'll be talking about that in PR classes for years of what not to do. Just look at the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's not just this year. You can plenty of examples on what not to do from that organization over the course of the last 10. Hammer, thanks for doing this, man. I'll look forward to your piece on Andrew Harris tomorrow, and very interesting week for the Jets coming up. Time to get some dubs.
Always a pleasure, Huss. Thanks for having me on, and shout out to the crew. And I'm back on Kenny and Rennie a bit more, so just a little more time for you guys to give me digs and me to give them back. So always appreciate having me on there.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, pal. There he is, Jeff Hamilton. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff K. Hamilton. And of course, writing sports on the Bombers and Jets in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. Our friends at Manitoba Battery have gotten us through this point in the winter, and now it's time to, hopefully warm up a little bit. That being said, you still need a battery for your car that's going to get you through the worst of Winnipeg winter, and Manitoba Battery remains the premier stop for all your battery needs in Winnipeg and Manitoba. Most automotive batteries are priced for less than $100 with Core Exchange, or they'll deliver it to your door anywhere in Winnipeg for $115 on the same day you order it, as long as you let them know by 1:30 p.m. And for you ice fishing enthusiasts out there, we're getting out of this deep freeze. It's time to get back out on the water, and Manitoba Battery has the flasher batteries you need to keep you catching fish for the rest of the season. Whatever you need battery-wise, Manitoba Battery's there for you. 1026 Logan, 204-783-8787, and down at 1026 Logan Avenue, manitobabattery.com. Super Bowl week is here. I do know that our friends at Royal Sports still do have some Bengals and Rams gear available for people wanting to jump on the bandwagon. But the bandwagon for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is already full. And if you missed the show on Friday, they just got 4 new exclusive Winnipeg Blue Bombers Grey Cup back-to-back champions hats available. You can check those out at Royal Sports. Go onto their Instagram page and give them a follow at Royal Sports Pembina. for the latest merchandise drops and great deals. And while you're there, you can check out the thousands upon thousands of many exclusive Winnipeg Jet merchandise pieces, not to mention their massive hockey display and store, goalie equipment, skate sticks, snowboards, fitness, and of course, all the cool stuff over on the Kings Skate, Snow, and Surf side. Royal Sports over at 750 Pembina Highway. And as we are now well into 2022, you're looking ahead to the spring and going, maybe, just maybe, it's time for a new car. If you are thinking of upgrading the wheels, start your search with our friends over at Not Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team, locally family owned, the leaders in Teslas for a number of years here in Winnipeg, but there's so much more on the lot. Go down and see for yourself. And if you're looking for a particular make and model, talk to the experts at Not. They'll source it and get it here for you at the best possible price. You can also visit them online at not.ca. All right, let's get into a little bit more CFL free agency talk. Plenty of smoke around the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the Andrew Harris situation, and potentially, a couple free agents maybe coming to Winnipeg, filling some spots from departed Bombers, like is expected with Kenny Lawler. Got a chance to catch up just a little earlier before we went live with Dave Naylor, TSN Football Insider, to look ahead to noon Eastern tomorrow when CFL free agency officially begins. Nails, what's up? How are you?
Very well. It's been a little different, I think, this free agency period than the last time. I mean, I think technically by the rules, you're not supposed to be negotiating contracts in the window or talking numbers. It's supposed to be just, gauging interest, and then you can talk numbers into the free agency period. And last time there was like kind of teams that pretended that and other teams that didn't. Now it's like, deals are being announced basically. Certainly announces of, agreements and even numbers coming out about contract details, which we didn't used to see because, I say technically, teams, players are not supposed to be negotiating actual numbers with these new teams, but I think we've moved from the letter of the rule to the practical application of the rule, and I'm all for it. So,
yeah, well, it certainly give us a lot to talk about heading into tomorrow. I want to start with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with you for obvious reasons. It was very interesting that Johnny Augustine got a 2-year deal a couple of weeks ago, and that, Dave, that was a guy that we thought the Bombers would have a tough time keeping in the fold. I think that might have been the first indication that, whoa, wait a second, maybe Andrew Harris isn't part of the future. And then today, Brady Oliveira gets a 2-year deal. I mean, what did you make of those two signings, and what are you hearing about Andrew Harris's future in the Bombers and the CFL?
I had a conversation with somebody maybe a week and a half ago where they said, they thought Winnipeg would come back to Andrew Harris if they didn't get Oliveira and Augustine done. And then if they did, then that was going to be, the opportunity that Winnipeg would have to make a choice sort of. And it's played out very much that way. And I think both those guys had interest elsewhere. So, Winnipeg had to pay them. I mean, it's essentially shifting money, at the same position from one guy to two guys, younger guys. And this is one of those unfortunate situations in sports in general. I mean, I think everybody would love to see Andrew Harris finish his career as a Bomber, play it out, even if it's a reduced role. It's his hometown. I remember when he signed there as a free agent and he said the words, people around here better get used to winning. And he really made good on that. I mean, we forget, the Bombers were up and coming kind of when he signed on, but they weren't a winning team year in, year out, and they have been since. I think it would be great if he could finish his career there. Some of this becomes ego, some of it becomes economics, some of it becomes just a guy wanting to have a role where he's going to have the biggest role he can possibly have, even at this stage of his career. So I don't think it's done. I think there's a lot of people on Twitter concluding that it's done. I don't have that knowledge. I think it's probably a pretty fluid situation and has been over the course of the weekend and will be maybe right into tomorrow.
It was funny. I mean, Harris was out on Instagram today congratulating Brady Oliveira. I mean, certainly, a big part of that running back room and a fellow Oak Park guy. I mean, we know all the connections. But, Dave, we had Andrew on the program with us, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about the offseason and the Grey Cup, and we asked him about next season, and he said he wasn't sure, but he still felt that he had some gas left in the tank. Might we see Andrew Harris play for another Canadian Football League team this year that's not in Winnipeg?
I think we could. And I think any team that signs him, especially because of the injury factor of missing, in a shortened season that he missed a chunk of time and he was very productive when he played, I would expect you'd see a deal with some qualifiers in there, right? Like where I don't think a team is going to be worried about paying Andrew Harris for a productive season, but I think they are going to be worried about paying a lot up front and that he's not able to deliver that productive season because of health and age and injuries and those things that are just part of the human experience for football players. So that's what I would expect. I think that kind of thing is common. But I absolutely do. I haven't heard anything about him, retiring if he doesn't get a deal with Winnipeg. That's not been anything I've come across in any of the conversations I've had about Andrew Harris. So I would expect that if he can't get a deal done with Winnipeg, that he will be playing elsewhere in 2022.
It's something that's hard, frankly, for a lot of Bomber fans to wrap their head around, as you can imagine. I mean, I've maintained for a long time his signing here is the most impactful free agent signing in the history of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Maybe in the history of the CFL. Honestly.
You know what? You can certainly make that
I hesitate
argument
before I say those things, but there's more swings and misses in free agency than hits to start with. So a lot of the biggest contracts have been signed are ones you wouldn't want to do over. And I don't think it's overstating or hyperbole to suggest it's one of the most impactful. In fact, I think this current Bomber team has three of the most impactful CFL free agencies signings and free agent that I can ever think of in Harris, Big Hill, and Jefferson. I mean, show me a team that's got three of those.
Well, and what about Stanley Bryant?
Stanley Bryant would be a pretty good one as well. Absolutely. Yeah. You're right. When you look at how critical Winnipeg's offensive line play has been in this era and how they've kind of redefined a little bit about the way you build your offensive line in the CFL, that, you go out and get American tackles and find really good interior offensive linemen who are Canadians. And that's the way they've done it. It's a break from the old Montreal model of, 5 Canadians or 4 Canadians straight across the board up front.
And just one more thing on Harris before we get to everything else happening in free agency. His impact on the field was incredible. Off the field and within the culture of the team was maybe just as big, and that says a lot to it. But knowing the competitor that he is and knowing at the level that he has been playing, even in an injury-shortened year, I don't think it would surprise anyone if he went out, played with a real chip on his shoulder, and showed everyone that there is still some more tread on the tires, if you will, on 33.
Well, look, you remember how he played in the chip on his shoulder after he came back from the suspension, right? And was quite happy to serve it up in the face of, people like me, who didn't think he should be the MOP of the league because he'd served that suspension. But hey, on the field, when he came back, he was a highly, highly motivated individual who carried that, right to the Grey Cup. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. No, if he was out there, in that kind of situation. The other thing for the Bombers, I guess you say you're going to have to be is you can look at Andrew Harris as a football player, statistically, what does he do? How are you going to replace what he does on the field? I guess the other thing you have to look at is what is it going to do to the culture of our team if Andrew Harris leaves here an unhappy man? But I assume he's, got some pretty tight relationships on that team. And, it's just, I don't know how much that matters. Maybe it won't matter at all, but I think it's something you kind of have to stop and at least give consideration to.
No, I'm sure that's something that they're talking about at Blue Bomber HQ right now. Now, Kyle Walters has done a great job targeting the most important free agents. I mean, both sides of the line. We've talked about the big guys. The one place they haven't been able to bring most of their guys back is at the wide receiver position. Mm-hmm. And from what we're hearing reported, Dave, there is some serious jack being thrown around at top receivers, starting with Kenny Lawler. What can you tell us about Lawler and the sort of offers that are out there for him in CFL free agency?
Well, I think Kenny Lawler has taken full advantage of the window, I'd say. And I think there's a well-worn path between BC and Edmonton across the Rockies there, where offers have been flying over the mountains back and forth. I'm led to believe that Edmonton has come in with an offer of $300,000 for the 2022 season. 300, which would be, I think there was a $300,000 offer out for Duke Williams, and it may have been from Edmonton. And so this may be just, reposition Duke Williams money. But Duke Williams, set a new top of the market when he signed his deal with Saskatchewan on the weekend for $260. Remember at the end of the year, we were seeing the top receiver market kind of come in under 200. And then when Lucky Whitehead got 205, that was kind of like an eye opener. So now we see, the 250 eclipsed by Duke. And now And I'm led to believe the BC offer is not for as much, although it may contain some elements that may be attractive to him, in a different context than just pure dollars. So we'll see. Usually the biggest offer lands the guy. Right now, that's the Edmonton Elks. We'll see if BC comes back again, because from what I understand, there's been a lot of dynamics in this one. But yeah, this is why, Winnipeg, goodbye. There's just, Kenny Law is a great player. He was the leading receiver on the Grey Cup champion team, the leading receiver in the league. But there's no way a team like Edmonton is going to, or Winnipeg, would even begin to invest that much money in one player at that position. And this is what GM's jobs are, right? GM's jobs, when they found Kenny Lawler, he was just a guy at camp, right? I mean, look, he's a former NFL draft pick. He came out of college early, which every time you see a guy came out of college early to the NFL, that tells you right away he's got pedigree, right? Like that's so he had pedigree. He'd been attractive to the NFL, but there are a lot of guys like that. And playing on an entry level contract is a huge advantage, for a team like Winnipeg to have him on a starter's deal compared to what it's going to cost the team that's going to bring him into 2022. And it's Kyle Walter's job to go find the next Kenny Law, the next Darvin Adams if he doesn't come back. That's basically what GMs do. And I've heard GMs say in this league, if you're a good GM in this league, you should be able to replace everybody except your quarterbacks or your Canadians. That doesn't mean necessarily, replace him with a guy who's just as good, but, hopefully replace him with a guy who someday might be just as good, that you're tapping into that. And that's what GMs get paid for.
Dave, staying with receivers, you mentioned Darvin Adams. He's had a couple interesting tweets lately. It doesn't sound like he's had a lot of contact or significant discussions with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What do you see happening with him? And is Greg Ellingson the guy the Bombers are targeting to come in and maybe replace some of that production, certainly from Lawler and potentially from Adams?
I think you're right on Adams. I mean, I know that last time in free agency, it was really touch and go with him till the very end. I think it may be kind of a similar situation again. He listened to a lot of other offers last time around. So I couldn't tell you he's gone, but it certainly, would seem to be at best a maybe. And on the Greg Ellingson thing, I don't have a lot of intelligence on Greg Ellingson. I believe Ottawa is interested in him. Of course, he has a history there, has the most famous catch in Red Blacks history, basically, in that playoff game against Hamilton in 2015. Has a history with Jeremiah Mazzoli that would go back to their days in Hamilton together. So there's some reasons to see that. I think Ottawa is also, by the way, interested in Darvin Adams. At least, maybe not over the top interest, but I think they have some interest. So, but Ellingson was still, have to see him and Darrell Walker were kind of interesting because they both got caught up in, a bad Edmonton Elks season. Neither of them had a great season. And I think Walker signed at about 160 or 170, if memory serves me correct, which is, $100,000 less than he signed for 2 years ago when Toronto signed him for 275. So I would expect that Ellingson would kind of be in that range for whatever team wants to go. I don't think we're going to see him, as a plus 200 guy.
Dave Naylor of TSN with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, getting ready for CFL Free Agency. Dave, at this point, from what you know, who are the teams that have done the most for their plight over the course of these last few days heading into Tuesday?
I've got to say the Ottawa Red Blacks have been, as I expected, to be very aggressive.
They had the most work to do.
Well, I mean, look, when you win 3 games for the second year in a row, you're not retaining a lot of guys going forward. One of the beauties of the league with all its free agency, and I don't love all the free agency, but if you're a team at the bottom, it does make it easier to climb up because you're not beholden with contracts from the previous administration. You basically walk into the market with more money than anybody else and a good opportunity to rebuild your team. So, I mean, Jeremiah Mazzoli, they needed Jeremiah Mazzoli. Like, if Ottawa didn't get Jeremiah Mazzoli, the options were going to be, Matthew Schultz, well, I think if Mazzoli had landed in Edmonton, they would have cut Nick Arbuckle. So Nick Arbuckle would have been an option. Trevor Harris would have been an option. But like Trevor Harris and Nick Arbuckle are 2 guys that already were in Ottawa. And then you throw in Chris Streveler. Could you reunite him with Lapo and make him a serviceable starting quarterback? Like, I think all of the options for Ottawa got really scary once they got past Jeremiah Mazzoli. And I joked on Twitter, the noise you heard from the nation's capital, besides all the honking, was the giant sigh of relief when they got Jeremiah Mazzoli to commit to that contract, because that was one that, and I think there was a lot of pressure on Sean Burke, right? he's a new GM going to a team that's had horrible quarterback problems the last 2 years, and he has a connection with a guy because he was part of the senior management group in Hamilton. Like, there was an expectation on him that he was going to deliver either Dane or Jeremiah, and if he didn't, it's not a fireable offense, but it's swing and miss on your first real important transaction and hole to fill as the general manager of the Ottawa Red Blacks. So, I think on an individual level, that was a real coup for him. And for the Red Blacks, it was, I say a giant sigh of relief. And, that they look at Kwaku Boateng, Jalen Acklin, they've added a lot of pieces. And, I talked to Sean Burke about 3 weeks ago in advance of free agency, and I said something like, how's it going? And he said, oh, this is really different, and in Hamilton, to be honest, the last few years especially, all we really did was work on re-signing our own guys. We weren't really going into the market, maybe here 1 or 2 guys, but all of our efforts and our energy and our concentration and our analysis was on our own guys. And here, we're going to be going out into the market a little more. So, they definitely, I think, have done a good. I think, some of the things we believe are happening with Toronto, with Jagarry Davis likely going there, with John Mechie done there. They've got Jawan Breskison back, who kind of fell below the radar last year. I mean, Breskison had a kind of a breakout year in 2017. Then he got hurt in 2018. 2019, he got hurt with Calgary. Then they missed the season in 20, and he had an injury last year. But he just turned 29 last month, and he's not a lot of guy with a ton of tread on the tires. So, I thought that was a good one for them as well.
You mentioned Chris Streveler. Any smoke on him coming back north of the border, or will that be something that sort of takes a while? We shouldn't expect anything happening this week.
Well, I think there's 2 categories there. One is, would somebody want him to come in and be a backup or a 1A, or would somebody actually want to make him be their starter? And because the starter, you think the conversation is going to start at $400,000, basically, right? That's if I would think. In the backup, you're talking probably, under 2, wherever you go. So it's a different economic. All I really know about Chris Streveler is that he does have some interest in NFL teams. At this point, he's a free agent. He's been a free agent for about a month. There's nothing stopping an NFL team from signing him yesterday. So, but I think there is some teams that are still interested in him. But I'm led to believe that if he did not get an NFL contract for 2021, or excuse me, for 2022, he was not one of those guys who was going to sit out the year, and say, okay, I'm going to give it and hope to get a call sometime in July, August, October, whatever, that he wanted to play this year. So, that I think the combination of not getting an NFL deal, and if he got offered starters money in Canada, I think he would come back. If he doesn't get an NFL deal and he only gets offered backup money in Canada, I think it's a big maybe and probably a no. Would be my instincts, but that's kind of where it's at. I don't think we're going to see him staying at home on his couch rather than playing football in 2022.
Dave, great stuff. Hey, just on the way out, let me ask you tomorrow for the when things get going at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
Who are the few free agents maybe that we haven't talked about that are the most intriguing to you that could make a big difference that everyone seems to be have interest in?
Let me give me my list here for a second. I'm just going to because I did make a lot of notes on this kind of exact topic that you just raised. So let me just see, because I got a bunch of pads here. Okay, let me just see. Okay, some guys that I'm interested in that I'm sort of curious about. Let's see. And some of these guys I haven't heard very much about, but I'm just going to shoot a bunch of names at you. You ready?
You bet.
Patrick Levels, Sonia Namba, Ricky Collins, Frankie Williams. I had Darvin Adams on that list. I think William Powell's going to Ottawa, we believe, right? So that one's there. Markeith Ambles in Calgary. Michael O'Connor, I think, is one. Eric Moncrief, Matthew Betts, Shaq Johnson, Javier Posey. How's that? Those are names that I've been putting together that, and honestly, a lot of those guys I don't have a lot of information on, but they're all guys that I think are, kind of that next tier. If they, either a guy looking for a breakout year or a bounce back year, or maybe just kind of a little lower down the top tier of players in terms of where the market is right now.
Well, I can tell you what, it's going to be an exciting day for CFL fans and certainly for CFL media. I know you'll be doing Sports Center hits. What else will be keeping you busy tomorrow? Just be firing reports both out to Twitter and tsn.ca.
filing reports, jumping on tsn.ca, looking a little different than I do right now, and and probably cranking a column or something at some point. It'll be a busy day, and it's been interesting. Feels like there's a lot more deals done, leading into the opening of free agency than there was a year ago, and just teams acknowledging what we all kind of know to be true. So.
All right, our pal Nail's joining us a day ahead of CFL Free Agency. We'll have to check in. We'll get Bombing on the program at some point this week as well for his thoughts on what's going on with the Bombers and around the Canadian Football League, as well as all the fallout from tomorrow. And we'll be able to follow it live as we are on the air tomorrow at 1 o'clock, a couple hours after CFL Free Agency officially begins. A big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. And you know what? A cheers to Ryan Friesen. Ryan did pay his bet on the weekend. I used the $40 to enjoy a couple of nice, delicious 1919s at one of my favorite local watering holes. You can do the same by popping down a Little Brown Jug on William Avenue and pick up that great 1919, the Brewed IPA, and the Little Brown Jug Double, which is a very popular winter beer. Be a little romantic as well, getting ready for Valentine's Day next week. Malt forward Abbey style ale with rich, dark, full fruit flavors, of course. And it and the rest of the Little Brown Jug beer line is available for home delivery as well. Little Brown Jug delivers beer straight to your door 3 days a week on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. You can order online right now at littlebrownjug.ca or pop down and see them in person down at William Avenue at the brewery. Of course, Princess Auto. Man, we had some fun talking Scotties last week, and our Princess Auto curling report is all about Kerri Einarson, not one, not two, but 3-time defending Scotties Canadian women's champion. She and her teammates will be back on track to the World Championships, again, coming up, I believe, in Prince George a little later on. It wasn't as great a weekend for Rachel Homan and John Morris at the Olympics. They lost a do-or-die game last night on the final stone to miss qualifying for the medal round. Unfortunate for Canada and for Homan and Morris, but we still do have opportunities for 2 gold medals, including Brad Gushue's rank, and of course, Team Jennifer Jones, proudly sponsored by our friends over at Princess Auto. Of course, Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them at one of 2 local locations, or you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And the Jets are back tomorrow. We're going to have some fans in the building. Of course, great spot before or after every game is to pop by and see Crystal and all our friends over at the Boston Pizza City Place. And if you're not going to the game, no better place to get together with the gang to watch it than in the Boston Pizza Lounge, enjoying ice cold schooners, gourmet pizzas, world famous Boston's wings. It doesn't get much better than that. And if you want to order inside, don't bother cooking tonight. Check out their great game day deals and more, and order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Reem, just following up our conversation with Naylor, who joined me just before we went live today. He had a couple press conferences this afternoon. Interesting tweet just in the last 5 minutes from Naylor. I think it's still possible Andrew Harris could be with the Bombers this season. Wouldn't expect the role or compensation to be the same as what he's had, but that's part of playing the game in your mid-30s. We know what he is worth to this team and to the community. But again, these are very difficult decisions to be made under a salary cap system. But man, I think I speak for the majority of Bomber fans, hoping there's a way that he can be part of a 3-headed monster in the backfield with 2 other very talented young Canadian running backs in the newly re-signed Johnny Augustine and Brady Oliveira.
Yeah, there's some tough decisions, and that's what happens when you have a pretty good team that's up, with a salary cap league. You got to make tough decisions, and they brought back Oliveira and Augustine, and Kyle Walters said, the start of the offseason that it was going to be tough to bring back all 3, and Andrew Harris was making top dollar, and you gave some other guys raises like Zach Caleros, and I think it's tough to keep everyone. I also think he's at a position running back where you can plug a lot of guys in. Now, there's only one Andrew Harris has, one of the best to ever do it and one of the best Canadians, ever. It's So it's a really tough call. I mean, Jeff said, a franchise guy, fan favorite. I mean, to say no, it kind of reminds me of like when the Cardinals had to let go of Albert Pujols and let him go. Maybe Harris is a bit older than Pujols was, but the same thing. A franchise guy, a guy who's meant a lot to your team. At a certain point, you have to end the ties, and maybe it's better to do it too early than too late.
Here's the thing about Harris. He is 34, approaching 35, which is ancient for a professional football player, especially a running back. But the guy's a freak of nature. He continues. What was the Bombers' record last year with him playing? 7-0, and I guess they didn't lose a lot of football games. But the guy has been a difference maker, and even in the Grey Cup game, in the last time he's played with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, went for about 80 yards. I mean, continually moves the chain and is also a real emotional leader for the team in that dressing room, off the field, and a massive part of what the Bombers have done in the community. So, I'll believe it when I see it. Andrew Harris not being a Blue Bomber next year. The one thing that I do know, Reem, is that it's pretty clear that he wants to play. He told us himself when he joined us a few weeks back on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
I have no doubt that Andrew Harris can still play. He can still contribute. Now, I know there was some issues. I guess him and the Bombers had some differences about being prepared for camp. Sorry, I might be speaking out of turn here, but bottom line is he was hurt this year. I know he said he wasn't happy about that. Again, I mean, that's just what happens when you get older. You get hurt. I mean, Ottawa tried to go in with Mike Smith as goalie. Of course, he ended up getting hurt this year. Now, Harris is not quite as old as Mike Smith, but I mean, I think the bottom line is if you didn't have these two guys waiting in the wings, ready to go, ready for bigger roles, Johnny Augustine, 7.1 yards a carry last year, maybe you wouldn't feel okay about this, but again, a tough call. Glad I don't have to make it, but it seems like they're on the way to be. It's hard to imagine, especially Huss, if he were to be on the Riders.
Oh,
that would make it really bad. That would make it. I mean, if you go to BC, they haven't had a running back. They barely used one last year. But William Powell went to Ottawa. Like, I don't know. That would be bad. That'd be hard.
Be a hole. If Harris felt really jilted and there was a legit offer from Saskatchewan, I'm sure he's never realistically thought about going and playing for the Riders. But if that is his option to continue to play and he knows he's going to get a chance to stick it to his old team, I think we'd be seeing the best of Andrew Harris at his age with playing a real chip on his shoulder. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. As we just read from Dave Naylor, certainly the door is not closed on Andrew Harris with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But I will say this, I think with the deals to Augustine as well as Oliveira, this contract offer will obviously look considerably different than the one that has been put in front of him for the last number of years as such a major, major part of the Winnipeg Blue Bomber offense. We'll have bombing on the program tomorrow. We'll get the latest on that situation and more on CFL Free Agency. Hey, speaking of football, Reem, Super Bowl week is here. It's going to be interesting to see what this week is like. Obviously people that remember the show, I mean, Gary and I did a number of Super Bowls together, and really Radio Row every year it's the coolest week in the industry each and every season. But as companies have cut people and cut budgets, it has really been diminished over the last number of years. And I saw a picture last night from my buddy Gabe Morency and saw Radio Row, and it looked like it was about 15% of the size that we remember from some of the Super Bowls 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. All that being said, it's a really interesting matchup. You got the home team Rams going at it. You've got the Cincinnati Bengals, the upstart underdogs. So I'm interested to see what sort of hype we get going into the week. Certainly great quarterback stories on both sides, and those stories will be told over and over again all week long. But I am interested in just what we see media-wise from it. I know Rocky was asking, I think it was Rocky who was asking if we were going. We won't be there this year. Would love to do it again next season, and I think that certainly is a possibility, along with some other things that we've got planned to take the show on the road. But I am getting a little bit of FOMO right now, knowing that it is Super Bowl week and they're in LA of all these things, as we've been going through, seems like 20 weeks of minus 30 here in Winnipeg as we get to the final game of the season.
I'm going to be honest, I was putting together our notes for today, and I did our All-Star game notes. I did some NHL notes. I'm trying to keep up with everything from CFL offseason and Olympics. Yesterday, we went through that at the beginning of the show. I was like, oh yeah, the Super Bowl is on Sunday. I almost forgot. I was so wrapped up in Trevor Zegras' move at the All-Star game. I completely forgot Super Bowl, but maybe because it's Monday, we're waiting for everyone to arrive in Vegas and LA for the Super Bowl. And I'm sure I'll get fired up as we go on, and I'll be looking at whatever daily fantasy stuff or prop bets are available. I mean, I don't really have a dog in the race here. I think it would be cool if LA won in LA. Also, be happy for Matt Stafford after having his career wasted in Detroit, going to LA and winning one in the first year. But also Joe Burrow was a great story too. I mean, Cincinnati, first time in 30 years. Winning a playoff game. So
I'm riding with Winnipeg Walter. His team beat the Chiefs twice. They did it in incredible fashion in the playoffs. And I said afterwards, good on them. I will support the Who Day Nation in the Super Bowl. It'll be great. Hey, they've been underdogs. Well, I guess they weren't underdogs against the Raiders, but they were big underdogs against the Titans. They were big underdogs against the Chiefs, and they're big underdogs again against the Rams. And I think that's exactly the way the Bengals would like it. So we will certainly talk more Super Bowl as we get closer to the game on the weekend. Maybe we'll bring in Coolbet Chris before maybe on Friday's show for a bit of a gambling look at everything that is available to bet on up for Super Bowl Sunday. Always one of the biggest days of the week and biggest gambling days of the year. We'll have some fun. We'll kind of get to that in our Coolbet lines a little bit later on. That being said, Remis, the Pro Bowl did take place yesterday. And I realized there's nothing more degenerate than betting on the Pro Bowl. Hands up. I did have a little wager on the AFC. Shout out to them for covering the -2.5 point spread. But because I did have a sprinkle on it, I did watch a good portion of it. And oh my God, was it terrible. It has essentially disintegrated into a pseudo game of two-hand touch where guys don't really know if they're tackled or not. Funniest bit in the entire game was Mac Jones running 90 yards for what he thought was a touchdown, only to realize that I guess he had been touched earlier and it didn't count. But I get it. I mean, I don't know how you make the Pro Bowl better. I mean, if you're actually going to have a quote unquote game with NFL rules and NFL timing, none of these guys want to get hurt. I mean, they're more concerned about, getting their contracts and playing next year. So I don't really know what the solution to it is. They added a few cool new things in the skills competition, especially with the receivers. But at the end of the day, I mean, the Pro Bowl, frankly, should maybe just be a party and, a bunch of skills type events, including an obstacle course and some things or race, because the game itself is an absolute dog's breakfast.
I saw some videos on Twitter of Jonathan Taylor, running, and guys are just it's like when you used to play in the school year, two-hand touch, and
yes,
some guys didn't know if they were tackled or not, or saw a pick six where no one even bothered to try, and just sticking your arm out. I've never watched the Pro Bowl. I've never been into it, and sorry, I've been eating something, got on my microphone, and I've never been into it, and so it just proves my point yesterday. What a waste of time, unless you bet on it. I hear there's you can make a lot on if you pay attention for betting or daily fantasy, but in terms of, I don't know what I think make it a flag football game. I have no idea.
Something like that. I mean, I don't know. Jeff Cabillas, hey, the Pro Bowl should be the Jags versus the Lions for the first overall pick. I have heard something like that. It would be hilarious with what was traditionally their All-Star game turning into a feature of the two worst teams in the league playing for the opportunity to pick first. I guess the one point is, what the hell would the players think about that? I mean, oh, great, you finished last, so you have to go to play in the Pro Bowl a month after your last game. And the reward for this is you get the first overall pick of a guy that might take your job next season because you were on a terrible football team. I don't know whether that's going to work, but I'm here for all of the ideas. But Remo, a big story today in the NFL coming from the world of social media. How freaked out should Cardinal fans be that former number 1 overall pick and franchise quarterback Kyler Murray has unfollowed the Cardinals and scrubbed any and all evidence of any connection with the franchise from his Instagram page right now.
Very worried. I would say I wouldn't be able to sleep, as I know Jeff Cabillas in chat is a big Cards fan, but I think if you're actively going on your social media and deleting every picture of you in a Cardinals uniform and taking it away from your description, something's up. That's really bad, man. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I find it very interesting. I'm here for the story. Anytime an athlete goes and makes changes, like unfollowed his employer on social media. It's not good. I don't know what's up. Maybe difference of opinion with the coach, but I would be pretty worried.
Let's face it. This is like a relationship, and there's nothing more official in 2022. If you're breaking up with someone, that you clean out all their pictures from your feed. Mm-hmm. And when people go, if they're wondering, what you're up to, I wonder if he's with anyone, and you go and look, and all of the pictures that you used to, all the lovey-dovey things with your ex are taken away. That says free agent in life. And Kyler Murray today doing the internet breakup with his team, the Arizona Cardinals. And now maybe this has something to do with Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, Kingsbury was basically brought in to be the offensive mastermind behind a team and he wanted Kyler Murray. They picked him number 1 overall, and they've had some success. They've had terrible ends to the season the last couple of years, but they've certainly won a bunch of football games with them. But the way the playoffs went in the end of the season, there was a lot of question as to whether Cliff would still be around. Technically, he has a job right now. So I'm not sure whether there's stuff going behind the scenes, but tell you what, on a slow Monday of Super Bowl week, when the teams are just coming in, not really starting to practice around LA yet, I'm sure this, despite the fact that it was simply an act on one player's social media page, is going to be getting a ton of run around NFL convos for the next 24 hours.
I see a lot of people talking about it already. It's, I don't know what to make. It's just interesting, and I love how someone, I guess, went to his page and discovered that all reference to the Cardinals is gone. So seemingly he's breaking up with them, but what was going to happen, I don't know. But something's off. Or what excuse he comes up? Oh no, I got hacked, or my kid took my phone and deleted a bunch of stuff, or.
Just things with Arizona, just things with the Cardinals on it. There are a couple of notes from the National Football League, and a couple of coaching notes. Mike McDaniel is the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins. You may not have heard about Mike McDaniel. He was a coordinator under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco the last couple of years. Has had some hilarious press conferences. He looks like a 25-year-old intern. Which I think adds to maybe some of the comedy that he's been able to deliver. But it sounds like they're going to be going after Vic Fangio to be the defensive coordinator. But I'll tell you what, Reem, there was all this talk, and certainly going back to the Brian Flores lawsuit. Brian Flores was apparently in for the Texans job. That's not happening. They were apparently going to promote and hire Josh McCown, and I think they got some real pushback on that. And now it looks like they are going to bring in a person of color. Former Bucks and Bears head coach Lovie Smith back on the sidelines, reportedly as the coach of the Houston Texans. Now, they've said for 2022, I'm not sure whether this means he's going to be one and done, much like David Culley was, who I think got a real raw deal in Houston, considering the dog's breakfast that he was served up personnel-wise without Deshaun Watson last year. But a couple more vacancies filled right now as we get into the meat of Super Bowl week in the NFL.
Yeah, we do have all these coaching vacancies that we're dealing with. So NFL offseason in full swing. Seems like the drama in the NFL doesn't end. And we did have a Pro Bowl weekend in Las Vegas. Alvin Kamara getting into a battery incident. I don't know what that means
happened?
For him.
He beat the hell out of someone at a club?
Yeah.
Apparently this was a club incident. He played in the Pro Bowl and then was basically arrested right after the Pro Bowl and got taken down to the Clark County Detention Center to, I guess, get into the paperwork and figure out what's next. But not the story. Well, listen, if there was going to be a star player getting in a fight in a club and being arrested, better Alvin Kamara than Kyle Connor. But listen, I mean, these guys are professionals. They know what comes in with the territory. Crazy that in 2022 we're hearing a story like this happen for such a big time, well-known player like Alvin Kamara.
I know. I was a big Kamara fan. Love when he gets the ball. Great fantasy player. Always gets receptions, except when it's Taysom Hill at quarterback. Deal all Kamara's carries, but definitely disappointing to see this as someone who's been a fan of Alvin Kamara. So we'll see what comes of and what it means for him going forward.
T. Konapali, Huss, any news on Gus? Well, no news on anyone from the Winnipeg Jets, but there is a late practice today starting at 4 o'clock, I guess, allowing guys to get back into town from wherever they've been. Of course, tomorrow's a game, so no time to sort of ease into it. Dave Lowry will put the guys through the paces this afternoon. And at that point, I'm sure we'll hear some updates. I mean, I'll be interested to hear how Nikolai Ehlers is doing. He's not even eligible to come off the list until next week, but I think there still is some questions as to how much longer he'll be. And certainly a guy like Gustafsson, as well as a number of the defensemen that were out week to week before the All-Star break. We'll get updates on that. So we'll hit all of that tomorrow. And of course, get ready for a big game, the first of the remaining 40 for the Winnipeg Jets at home against the Minnesota Wild. We do have to get to the Coolbet lines in a second. Got to give a big shout out to our friends, the Nick and Nikki DQ group. It was so nice, relatively speaking, on the weekend. It felt like blizzard weather, not the blizzard warning and the legit blizzard we had last week, but one of those delicious ice cream treats from our friends at Nick and Nikki DQ with 4 locations: the DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. So while we're going to actually hit freezing a couple times this week, so you can put the shorts on and head down to DQ and get a blizzard. While you're there, check out the Buffalo Chicken Fingers, of course, the Ultimate Grill Burger, and more. And if you do have an event coming up, it's always better with a world famous DQ cake. You can hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba, and you will be able to order your custom DQ cake and have it ready for you fast and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQ locations. Hey, a big shout out and congratulations to Colin Jensen, who, as he described to me on the weekend, is the reigning marbles champion on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Got a nice Canadian club package put together for Colin. He, of course, won a hoodie, but Colin was kind enough to have already purchased one. So we got a T-shirt for him and a nice bottle of Canadian Club for his win. If you don't have a Winnipeg Sports Talk hoodie or would like to check out the merchandise, do us a favor. Go to this website, winnipegsportstalk.com. Hit the store and you'll see all of the options there. Really appreciate all the support from everybody. And of course, your next chance to win one of those hoodies is this Friday with our marble race sponsored by our friends at Canadian Club. And we will have Canadian Club on sale all the month of February at your local Manitoba liquor marts. Look for the display. Great prices all month long on Original CC, Canadian Club 100% Rye, and Canadian Club 12-year reserve all this month at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And we'll do our next contest, the Marble Race, coming up on Friday, heading in to Super Bowl week. Remo, not a ton going on tonight, but we do actually have a couple of hockey games. No waiting to get right back into it. Jersey and Ottawa, and the Carolina Hurricanes playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not sure whether Freddie Anderson's going to get the start against his old club or whether he will have the night off coming back from the All-Star game. But, a couple games to bet on. If you like Ottawa, a -132 favorite to New Jersey, who, of course, will be without Jack Hughes, who tested positive upon his return to the club. So he's on the list for a few days. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, a -139 favorite against the Carolina Hurricanes coming out of the gate. I'm interested to see what these games look like, Reem, because, obviously the teams, if they were able to, maybe did a little skate last year, but just getting right back into it. And then a full slate of games tomorrow with 7 games in the National Hockey League as all of these rescheduled and made up games are about to get going in the month of February.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard us, what the Jets have, 40 games in 81 days?
I have heard.
Have you heard
Sounds
like
a
that
busy
one?
schedule.
Yeah, Jets 40. Let me read it. Yeah, 40 games in 81 days coming up. It's going to be a tough one. I wonder how much load management we're going to see. I think it's going to be interesting that they do return tomorrow.
There's no option. I mean,
You don't
they're
think
too
they-
far down in the standings for any sort of load management. It's all hands on deck every night for the Winnipeg Jets for 40 games. And, we'll see if they can stay in it. Well, first and foremost, win some games and get back into the conversation and stay in. And, I mean, from a Jets fan perspective, you're certainly hoping they can win enough games where they're not obvious sellers at the deadline, but it's hard to ignore that possibility right now, considering the way the first 42 went to the season.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at someone's like, how did the Blues get into the playoffs that time, a couple years ago? They went like 30, 10, and 5 in their final half of the season. Now the Jets have a little less runway than that, so it's gonna be
As I
tough.
said, you got to win 3 of every 5 and then plus bank a few more points. I mean, 24, 11, and 5 will probably get you in. But that's still winning, like 24 of 40 is winning 3 of every game, and then, mixing in at least 5 extra points for that. So should be a great test to do it against the Wild coming right out of the gate. And we talked about these 5-game segments, Remo. There's 8 left of them. You got to win 3 of each. This is a huge one, beginning 5 straight divisional games starting tomorrow with the Minnesota Wild.
Oh yeah, season starts tomorrow. They got well, they do have practice day at 4, so we'll wait and see what comes from that. But yeah, busy week ahead. Minnesota on tomorrow, and then Friday, Saturday, Dallas, Nashville. But next week you got Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. So a lot of games. Hey, Monday, 8 p.m. home game a week from today against Chicago. Actually,
8 o'clock start that night on Valentine's Day.
8, yeah, it's nice. Get a nice dinner in. Probably feeling pretty good after the Super Bowl day. That sounds like a good game. It's actually supposed to be an Offspring concert on the 14th at Canada Life, but that got postponed. Now I know why.
I'm sure all those tours right now are pretty much canceled.
I'm still waiting. Rage Against the Machine has been postponed like 3 times here. They still haven't announced a date when it's going to be. I've been holding on to these tickets. Live Nation has had my money for like 2 years. Hopefully they're getting some good interest. I mean, those weren't cheap tickets. They're holding a lot of my cash right now, Live Nation. So
it'd be interesting to find out how much they can make off interest by just holding on to the amount that people paid for tickets for these postponed shows that have gone basically a couple years. Here's my prediction. You'll eventually get a refund at some point. It won't include interest because I don't think Rage Against the Machine is going to be raging in Winnipeg anytime.
They better be. I need to go to a concert. I haven't been to one in a long time. I guess we're winding down, Huss. I did want to bring up one thing. We didn't talk about this on Friday. The Chicago Blackhawks doing their GM search.
Oh.
And I think if you're a Jets fan, you're got to be pretty excited when you saw that they interviewed Peter Chiarelli, current Blues VP of Hockey Operations and former Oilers GM. Gave them the nice parting gift of the Koskinen contract. I'm hoping they sign Peter Chiarelli, but they're doing this thing. I haven't seen this where teams announce who they're interviewing. I guess no need for insiders anymore where you just leak it yourself. So they've already interviewed the current interim GM Kyle Davidson, Carolina Hurricanes assistant GM Eric Tulsky, former Montreal assistant GM Scott Mellenby, and today they announced they completed an interview with Jeff Greenberg. Who's that? He's currently the assistant GM with the Chicago Cubs. I don't know. I thought he's been with the Cubs since 2012. He's got a law background. I don't know what to make of that. I just find that interesting. I wonder what he could bring to baseball. I feel like baseball has been very forward thinking, not using just baseball guys as GMs, starting with Theo Epstein like years ago. I don't know what he would bring to the Blackhawks. I just find that interesting.
Is Joe Mack getting an interview?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going for football guys too, but we'll wait and see what happens there in Chicago.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, I think some outside of the box thinking is always welcome. Whether they make that decision or not, we will see. I can tell you that listening to the boys over on 1260 in Edmonton talk about Peter Chiarelli getting the interview, that has given them no shortage of content and entertainment to talk about that Oiler fans either can't possibly hear or can't get enough of, considering the way his tenure ended in over in Edmonton.
In all seriousness, like if you're looking for a GM and you looked at Peter Chiarelli's resume, why would you want to hire him. I know that he's got experience, but I mean, some of the moves, questionable.
I mean, he took so many L's in trades his reign in Edmonton was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, you come into a situation with that sort of talent and end up getting, fired the way. And, the Koskinen contract was just the cherry on top of the sundae. The fact that happened like a day before he got fired, and then they're still dealing with it today. And, to the criticism of Ken Holland, have still not done anything with the goaltending position other than re-sign Mike Smith, who's always hurt and hasn't been able to help. Although, hey, they won a bunch of games going into the All-Star break. They're a lot happier in Edmonton than they were a couple weeks ago. Hey, just before we finish, I mentioned there's a couple games that you can get on tonight at Coolbet. Of course, they also have a full selection of Olympic odds available for you. And of course, tonight is a little ice hockey action between Canada and the United States. Let's see what the number is. Canada plus 110 to win in regulation. USA plus 190 to win in regulation. And a draw is 3-1. That game going at 10 o'clock p.m. Again, if you've never bet at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% deposit on your first deposit up to $200. And there's all sorts of things you could bet on Olympic-wise over at Coolbet.com. Tonight, Remo, what do we got? We've got the women's free ski big air final. We've got parallel giant slalom qualifications in snowboarding. The men's Super G final in alpine skiing, that gets going at 9 p.m. our time. That's always quite a popular event. And then, of course, we have the Canada-USA game. That'll be a huge game on a number of channels in a number of languages. And then a little later on tonight, if you do like the mixed doubles, the bronze medal game will be coming up a little later on tonight. Throughout the evening, what do they got? Biathlon, a little more hockey, women, Japan, and the Czech Republic. 1,500 meter men's speed skating finals at 4:30 in the morning. Cross-country skiing, a individual sprint free final is at 4:30 a.m. Oh, and then we're going to get into some luge. You get up early, 5:50 a.m. Women's singles heats 3 and 4 in the luge. So, you know what? It's been a little slow for our pro sports the last couple days. Shout out to, it was some great golf on the weekend. By the way, HV3, Harold Varner III, holding out on the final hole for his second playoff win and a huge check in Saudi Arabia. He now shoots into the top 50. And if he can stay there up until the 28th of March, he will get an invitation to the Masters. And man, I've had some tough luck in the lock shop. I was riding Jordan Spieth at 22-1. He bogeyed 17, and out of the blue, Tom Hoge birdies 3 of the last 4 holes and wins his first PGA Tour event at Pebble Beach. First win in 203 starts for Tom Hoge. So a couple good guys getting big wins, but a bit of a heartbreaker for yours truly after what happened to Zalatoris last week, losing in the playoff.
Yeah, there you go. I guess golf season underway, baseball. I'm starting to plan my fantasy baseball. We got Olympics. I don't know how I'm going to manage all this hockey, NHL hockey and Olympics. It's going to be a jam-packed week here. Of course, CFL Free Agency. I mean, we know a lot of the stuff, but officially kicking off tomorrow. So there's is basically. Oh yeah, and the Super Bowl. How could I forget? I almost forgot again.
Yes, Super Bowl is happening. Oh, and by the way, Waiters was asking if the 1290 30 for 30 is going to be released on Wednesday. I don't believe that is ready to be released yet, but we will work on having a few familiar voices and great friends of ours jump on Wednesday's show. So should be great. Thanks to everyone for popping by. If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button and make sure you've subscribed. And again, to everyone listening on the podcast, thanks for making us a part of your day. If you can give us an Apple or Spotify review and a 5-star rating, we would greatly appreciate it. A big thanks to all of our sponsors. We mentioned Coolbet. We'll get Chris on it sometime this week to prep us all for what's available to bet on for the Super Bowl. Canadian Club Whiskey, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Not Auto Corp, Royal Sports, Manitoba Battery, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, and of course, our friends over at F Apparel. Thanks to Dave Naylor for joining us. Thanks to Jeff Hamilton. All of you for joining us live on the YouTube today. Everyone listening on the podcast. And of course, the thanks to Michael Remis, the CTO, getting us on and off the air with some great chatting today. Folks, have yourself a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow. Bombing will join us. We'll get ready for Jets Wild and the beginning of this 40-game sprint to the finish for the Winnipeg Jets, all tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Thanks. Sorry, before we go, not bombing. John Hodge on tomorrow.
Oh, John Hodge, excuse me.
We'll try again.
I screwed that up.
Yeah.
Bombing, though, we will put an invite out. Maybe we'll bring bombing back with a bunch of the TSN boys, our former TSN boys, on Wednesday. Anyways, the invite's out for bombing. John Hodge on free agency tomorrow from 3 Down Nation. That'll be great. Jets getting ready to play and much, much more. Thank you for the correction, Remo. Thanks to everyone in chat. Have yourself a great night. We'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.